Knock on the Saints door. Quarterback sneak by Tom Brady to the 43-year-old score. He did. Touchdown, Tampa Bay. Now, spike that ball, Tom Brady. Who says I'm 43? He runs right up the gut and scores 6. 7. Handoff, run the ball. Fournette slashes away to the 40, to the 35, to the 30, to the 30, 25, to the 20. Fournette to the 10, 5, 3, 2, 1. Touchdown, Tampa Bay. Run the ball, Leonard Fournette. Wow, what a blast up the gut, found daylight, and outran everybody. Fire the cannons, get them going. Bucs win. Bucs win, Bucs win. Fire them cannons.
First snap in Vikings territory for Tampa Bay. Brady all day. Downfield. Touchdown, Scott Miller. Four-man rush. Brady airing it out, going deep. He's got it to Antonio Brown. Touchdown, Tampa Bay. Ronald Jones will get it. Big hole. Jones gets by. Ronald Jones may go all the way. Being chased from behind. Does Jones have enough? Still on his feet. Ronald Jones, 98-yard touchdown.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Swords Up Podcast. And today, it's almost time. The time has almost come. It's Super Bowl 55. Chiefs, Buccaneers at home. And I am just really excited for this one. I mean, I can't describe how amazing this moment is that we've made it to the Super Bowl. But we're going to be previewing this game. It's almost here. And we get set to look forward to it. And so in this video, we're going to be looking at the preview to this game, looking at the key players and the matchups, as well as giving a prediction at the end of it. But starting out, of course, with the injury report, like always. And I was watching this throughout the past couple of weeks, really anxious to see how the Bucs would come into this game. And to my surprise, things look really good for us, honestly. The only two players listed as questionable for us right now are Cameron Brate, who popped up on the injury report this week with a back injury, did not participate in this last practice, so he's going to be coming into this game questionable. It seems like he's going to be 50-50 on whether he plays or not, but apparently he was feeling better on Friday in practice, so that's a good sign. And then also Antonio Brown, a full participant in practice the past 2 days, with that knee injury that he suffered in the Saints game, questionable coming into this one. That's going to be huge if he can play in this one, and I think we're going to get him back for this one. And then also Jordan Whitehead and Antoine Winfield, I was keeping an eye on both of them as well, and looks like they're going to be full goes in this game. They were both full participants in practice on Friday and have no injury designations coming into this game, which is huge. And also Levante David's good to go. He was listed as questionable last week when the Bucs released their injury report for if the game is going to be played last weekend. And so he is going to be good to go, even though he's been dealing with a hamstring injury. But for the Chiefs, they have a couple players out who I already mentioned, Eric Fisher and Willie Gay. Obviously, that's a huge loss with Eric Fisher with a torn Achilles in the AFC Championship game that he suffered. That's a big loss for them. He made the Pro Bowl this year, their left tackle. And now that means, I think I already mentioned this, but 4 of the 5 Chiefs offensive linemen who are supposed to start the season are going to be out for this game. And so that's pretty big for us, as I'll get into that in a bit. But also coming into this game questionable for them, their number 2 receiver, Sammy Watkins, with a calf injury. Also pretty much 50-50 if he plays or not, but I think he'll be able to go. And when he's played, he's actually been a pretty important part of this offense, even though most people kind of overlook him. But if he plays, that's going to be pretty important for them. All right, so now let's get into the matchups for this game. And as I go through these key players, I'm going to be highlighting what I think are going to be the 5 most important head-to-head matchups in this game. And so we'll start on the Chiefs side of things and their key player who I highlighted, which is going to be Tyreek Hill. I think that's going to be one of the top 2 matchups going into this one. Tyreek Hill against the Bucs secondary, and that's obviously because he had a monster game against us last time, but also because I think that if we take away one of the Chiefs' weapons, it's just going to help us out and just make them easier to defend. And so I think that the guy we should really focus on taking away in this one is Tyreek Hill, and I'll get into why that is in just a bit, but I mentioned he had a monster game against us last time, and looking at it, he had 13 catches for 269 yards and 3 touchdowns, averaging 20.7 yards per catch in that Week 12 game. And on the season, he had 87 catches for 1,276 yards, 15 touchdowns, and 2 rushing, giving him 17 total touchdowns, of course, and averaging 14.7 yards per catch. The problem we had in the first game with defending Tyreek Hill is we were putting him man-to-man with Carlton Davis, which Carlton Davis is a really good man-to-man corner, but the problem is that Tyreek Hill is the fastest player in the NFL and can pretty much run by anyone, and he did just that because we didn't have any safety help over the top. So that was just poor game planning in general, and I don't expect us to have that same approach coming into this one. I think we definitely learned our lesson from the last game, and so we'll see how we cover Tyreek Hill, if it's just going to be doubling him or if we're going to have more safety support if we end up trying to play man against him. But I'd expect that we're going to either double cover him or play deeper zones on him just so he doesn't beat us over the top. And so we'll see exactly how we play that, but don't expect the same approach that we had in that Week 12 game against him. And I wouldn't expect another 200-something yard performance again. And so now looking at the leader of this Chiefs offense, and that's Patrick Mahomes. And really, I think we're coming off of a game in which we played Aaron Rodgers, who I think was the best quarterback this season. And so Mahomes, I think, was the second best quarterback this year. I think he's still the best quarterback in the league overall, but 2 straight games playing against the 2 best quarterbacks in the league this season, I think that's going to be a really tough task for our defense. You know, we really played well against Aaron Rodgers at times. Even though he did look like he was having his way, our defense really did step up big in the fourth quarter. And if we can do that, and, you know, the same things we did in the NFC Championship game that we can do in this game with stopping the Chiefs' offense and limiting their possessions. You know, we did this in the NFC Championship game with the Packers having 3 and outs and not being able to successfully capitalize on turnovers we gave them. If we can do that with the Chiefs offense and limit their drives and limit them to field goals, we can definitely win this game, as we showed in the NFC Championship game against the Packers offense. And looking at Patrick Mahomes' last game against us, he also had a monster performance along with Tyreek Hill. And in that game, he had 37 completions on 49 attempts for 462 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a quarterback rating of 124.7. And on the year, he had 390 completions on 588 attempts, giving him a 66.3% completion percentage for 4,740 yards, 38 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions, and a quarterback rating of 108.2. And I think those 6 interceptions, compared to the amount of pass attempts he had, I think that was something like the lowest interception rate this year. So he definitely doesn't turn the ball over at all. But the thing with Aaron Rodgers is that half of his interceptions this season came against us, and that was because we were able to get pressure on him. And then last game, we did actually get some good pressure on Mahomes, and we did sack him a couple times. And so if we can do that again in this one, I think that's going to be pretty important for us, which leads me into the Bucs key player. And in the NFC Championship game, I highlighted Jason Pierre-Paul as our key player going into that one, and he delivered. But Shaq Barrett also had a really great game in that one, and I'm going to be highlighting him in this one because I think not only do I not want to repeat the same player as our key player, but I just think the pass rush once again is going to be very important. Like I said, for the 5 starting offensive linemen from the start of the season that were projected to start for the Chiefs, not going to be playing in this one. And so we got to take advantage of that. And if we can do that, that'll be pretty big time for us. I think we will have a chance in this one. I think that's how we have to win this game, is to get pressure. And looking at Shaq Barrett in the NFC Championship game 2 weeks ago, he had 5 total tackles, 2 for a loss, and 3 sacks out of 5 total we had in that game. Jason Pierre-Paul having the other two. And also he had 1 sack in the previous matchup. Like I said, getting pressure on Mahomes. Our defense was able to do that, and that's what helped us almost come back in this one, was being able to get pressure on Mahomes and making him uncomfortable. And that, I think, is how we win this game. Looking at his 2020 stats, and he had 57 total tackles, 11 for a loss, 8 sacks, 16 QB hits, 3 passes defended, and 2 forced fumbles. Obviously, not the same season he had with that 19.5 sack season from last year, as he was the NFL sack leader. But once again, another really good season from Shaq Barrett, and I think that justifies us signing him to a long-term deal after the season. I'm really anxious to see what we do with him, because he obviously signed a franchise tag going into this year, and now that means he's going to be entering free agency again, and I think it's really important that we get him signed to a long-term deal just because of how impactful he has been in helping turn around our defense. Not only that, but really making a name for himself with the Buccaneers since he came here. Alright, so I highlighted 2 of the really important matchups. Now getting into the third of the 5, I think that's going to be Chris Godwin, and he'll most likely be going up against Tyrann Mathieu for the Chiefs. He is obviously the strong safety, but also plays pretty much anywhere along the defense. He can also play nickel corner, and I think he'll be matched up with Chris Godwin in the slot at some points. And looking at Chris Godwin, and he has struggled throughout the postseason, like I mentioned before, with drops, but I think in the NFC Championship game, I think he really found something and turned it around, and I think he's going to be back to his old form. And looking at the NFC Championship game, and Chris Godwin had 5 catches for 110 yards, averaging a ridiculous 22 yards per catch. And I think something about it in that game, which he had a couple drops early, and then Tom Brady trusted him on a 50-50 ball and just lobbed it deep downfield for him. And Chris Godwin went up, juggled it, and caught it. And something about that catch really showed me that he had gotten his confidence back after that. And I think he's going to be an important weapon because Tom Brady trusts him. I mean, this is the Super Bowl, and Tom Brady's going to have weapons that he can trust in these big moments. And I think Chris Godwin needs to be one of those guys. And I think he could come up really big for us in this one. Like I also said with Shaq Barrett, he's going to be a free agent going into the offseason. So a really big game from him in the Super Bowl could really increase his value. And we'll see what happens with him. But I could expect a big game from him. And looking at the last matchup he had against the Chiefs, he did have a pretty solid game, having 8 catches for 97 yards and averaging 12.1 yards per catch. And then on the 2020 season, he played 12 games, limited with injuries. Obviously, that finger injury that he had to have pins placed in it. It was just a really painful injury for him, but he came back pretty well from that, and he was playing through it quite a bit. But nonetheless, still finished the season with 65 catches for 840 yards and 7 touchdowns, averaging 12.9 yards per catch, even though he did miss 4 games. And so I think that's a pretty impressive season considering the injuries and the time that Chris Godwin missed throughout the year. And then I don't really have these players listed down as necessarily key players, but I think these are going to be key matchups, and these are my 4 and 5 matchups. And you can go and check out my Week 12 video for more info on these players that I'm highlighting. But the 4th and 5th important matchups going into this one of them is Lavonte David or Devin White matching up against the Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce. I think, like I said, Tyreek Hill is going to be the one that's taken away with double coverage, and so that's going to leave one of our linebackers on Travis Kelce, and I think that we can do a good job if that's how we try and cover the Chiefs' weapons in this one. If we double Tyreek Hill, I think I'm pretty confident one of our linebackers going on one with Travis Kelce because they're just really fast, and especially Devin White. I think he can keep up with the speed of Travis Kelce, but not only that, but also the physicality. I think Devin White is just a playmaker, and if he's matched up against Travis Kelce, he could really make some important pass defenses in this one, or maybe even an interception or a forced fumble or something like that. And also, I think Lavonte David can really match up with him well as well. Also, that will leave Devin White in zone coverage in the middle of the field. Maybe we spy Patrick Mahomes to prevent his running ability outside the pocket, and I'll give Devin White more free range, but nonetheless, however we match up against Travis Kelce, I'm feeling confident that one of our linebackers will be able to contain him. He's definitely going to get his yards and might get a touchdown, but I think that's how we match up against the Chiefs' offensive weapons for us to win in this one, because I think that Travis Kelce is going to get his yards and his catches against anyone, but I think we have the best chance of limiting him if we match up one of Levante David or Devin White against him. All right, so I mentioned Tyreek Hill going up against our secondary. I mentioned Shaq Barrett and our pass rush against the Chiefs' offensive line. I mentioned Chris Godwin against Tyrann Mathieu. And I mentioned Travis Kelce up against Devin White or Levante David. And fifth and finally is going to be the Bucs offensive line against the Chiefs defensive line. And the Chiefs do have a couple of good players along their defensive line in Chris Jones and Frank Clark. While personally I don't think their D-line is as good as ours, I think they can still generate pressure, and they definitely did that last game. Tom Brady was under pressure, had 2 interceptions, and they also had a sack on him in this one. They just made him really uncomfortable, and that was one of the important parts of this game and why we weren't really able to do anything offensively in the first half of that game. We have done a really good job of keeping Brady clean and protected recently, and so our offensive line really needs to keep that up for us to win in this one, because Chris Jones and Frank Clark can really be a threat against any offensive line, in my opinion. They're just that scary. All right, so now getting into the all-important game prediction, and I already mentioned pretty much all the factors going into this one, so I'm just going to lay out how I think the game is going to go. Pretty much I think the first half is going to be relatively low scoring. I think there'll probably only be 1 or 2 touchdowns scored in the first half, and I think it'll be pretty tight. Maybe the Chiefs will be ahead. I think it depends who gets the ball to start the second half. In my opinion, I think the Bucs get the ball to start the second half. They go down, score a touchdown, and they're up at the end of the third quarter, and they keep their lead going into the fourth. And I think Tom Brady engineers a drive with about halfway to go in the fourth quarter, and it puts the Bucs up by 30-26. And so the Chiefs get the ball back. They're stopped. Our offense gets the ball back, and they're stopped. And so it probably leaves Patrick Mahomes with about 2 to 3 minutes left to drive down and get a touchdown, down by 4. And I think he's going to be able to do it. And then that'll leave Brady with about 45 seconds to a minute left and to drive down the field and score a touchdown, because the Chiefs will have scored 8 points on that drive and we'll be down 4. And I think we're just going to come up just short. We're not going to have enough time. But with that being said, I think this is going to be a really close game, and it could go either way. Honestly, there's even a chance that this one is a blowout for the Chiefs really in this one. But I think the way we win in this game is that if we make this a low-scoring game and our defense makes stops. And the last matchup was a Chiefs victory 27-24. We almost came back in that one, and the reason was our defense making plays to stop the Chiefs offense in the second half, and that led us to almost coming back from 17-0 down. If we can keep the game somewhat low scoring like that 27-24 game, I think we're going to win this game. But I think it'll be probably higher scoring than the last game, which in my mind sees the Chiefs winning in this one. I think both teams score in the 30s, and the Chiefs are going to come out on top, like I said, with a late drive at the end of the game. And so my prediction is a final score 34-30. Chiefs win Super Bowl 55. I want to give the most unbiased prediction I can, and so that's going to be it. But, I mean, the last 2 times I predicted the Bucs to lose, and they won. So hopefully that continues because I picked against them, and we'll see what happens. Obviously, hoping it goes the other way, but that's just how I see it panning out. And so that's pretty much going to be it for this Super Bowl preview. And let me know how hyped you are about the game in the comments below. I think, honestly, this is one of the most hyped up Super Bowls I've seen in quite a while. Obviously, with the quarterback matchup, but these two teams in general, I think we really expected the Chiefs to be here, but I think there were a lot of doubters about whether or not the Buccaneers would be here. I think it was a lot of people saying, oh yeah, this team's really talented, they're going to be here for sure. And a lot of people were also saying, oh, this team's not going to have enough chemistry to even be close to this point. But we're here, and I think a lot of people are going to really be satisfied with this matchup, seeing that it's obviously Tom Brady versus Patrick Mahomes, but also with the amount of talent on these two teams, it's going to be a really good game, and I'm really looking forward to it. And hopefully by the time I'm making another video, the Bucs will have their second Super Bowl title. And so that is it for me. Thank you guys for watching, and go Bucs.